Hello and welcome to another episode of TF Cast. Today, our guest, Jeni Kolstad, Director of Southern Minnesota Pride, Executive Director, is here to tell us a little bit about her role and who she is and how that organization works. Would you tell us about yourself a little bit before we get started?
Sure. Like you said, I'm the Executive Director of South Central Minnesota Pride. My day job is I'm a therapist, so I provide mental health services over at Open Door Health Center. And so a little known fact is that Executive Director of Pride is all volunteer. So I spend my volunteer time being an executive director. I have two children. I have a almost 21 next week, 21-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son. And I'm married to my lovely wife, Amanda.
Oh, well,
That's wonderful.
Any anxiety about that 21-year-old coming up?
Not really. I think we're good. We're good.
All right. How did you end up into how'd you find yourself in this role? Have you always been working as an organizer?
I can't say that I've always been working as an organizer, but I've always have had an interest in social justice. And so back in my younger days, it was more of a just working one-on-one with people, maybe just advocating for people, that sort of thing. But as far as kind of getting into more of the community organizing piece, so I'm a clinical social worker, so I didn't go back to school for social work until I was in my 30s. And so that's when really some of the pieces started coming together for me as far as, wow, we can really systematically put these things together and create change. It was also in that time when I started getting involved in organizations. So that's when I did get involved with the Pride organization. And I've been involved for over 10 years.
Oh, wow. What are some of those changes that you have seen that have been able to come through the organization?
So I think one of the biggest changes, so I actually met my wife at a Pride Fest 15 years ago. It was actually literally just 15 years ago, like a week ago. So that was kind of exciting. I posted on my Facebook. It was so cool. But when I met her, it was a very teeny tiny festival over in Sibley Park. I don't know if you guys were in Mankato around that time, but 15 years ago, it was very tiny. We had a itty bitty stage. We had maybe like 10, 15 exhibitors. We had, like a couple of like food options. Some of it was just like your typical bake sale type of stuff. And so, it was very grassroots,
How many people would have been there for that kind of thing?
Probably like 200 at most. At most, yeah. And so that was my first Pride Fest, was when I met her. And so then I was involved pretty much every year since. A couple of years I took off, but every year since I've had some kind of involvement. Now, people can see that our festival is huge now. We take up Riverfront Park. We've had estimates of 2,000 to 3,000 in crowd size.
Wow.
We didn't have a parade before. We've got this awesome parade down Riverfront Drive. So as far as the Pride Fest goes, it's really changed and grown.
Mm-hmm. And that's still all local here. Pride is it's always organized by the groups in the areas, right? It's not like I know there's corporate interest in it, but it's still a Mankato thing.
Correct. Yes. We are all local here to the Mankato area, the people who are organizing this festival. And it's interesting you say the corporate involvement. We do get sponsorships from local businesses, but we don't ever accept any big, huge corporate money. We're not like, let's put the Busch Light sign up or anything like that.
Yeah. That's one of the real kind of like common, criticisms you hear from within that community is people say, oh, it's gotten too corporate or whatever. So it's really awesome to hear that that's not the case in Mankato.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about this year. It was different. I mean, we were there. Mm-hmm. I haven't been to all that many Pride fests in Mankato, but this one was, way different.
Yeah, it was way different. So we were supposed to, back in March, have a gala. So I don't know if this came on your radar at all, but it was going to be our...
Is that like a gala?
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
And it was going to be awesome. We're still going to have it because, we offered refunds to people saying, hey, we realize that we have no idea when we're going to have this thing, but we're still going to have it. And only like 5 people requested their refund. So I'm like, sweet, people want this event. So we were going to have that in March, and it was literally the week of, and we had to cancel because of everything that happened with the coronavirus. And so, we're thinking, we'll give it a couple of months. And so we pushed it off till July. We, within like 3 days, rescheduled everything, the caterers, the drag performers, the sound, just everything. And then, of course, that didn't happen either. Mm-hmm. So we knew very quickly at that time that we were not going to be able to have Pride Fest in its normal capacity. We were watching Pride after Pride after Pride having to cancel their events. A lot of them went to virtual. There was like a world virtual Pride this year. I know Twin Cities Pride has done some virtual things. They're actually going to be doing their online parade coming up soon. So they even postponed it until now. So that's going to be coming. But we thought of all kinds of ways of like, how can we still have something? Because it's just so important to our community. There aren't very many opportunities here in Mankato for LGBT people and allies together. And so, we were like, what can we do that's like COVID safe? Really nothing. You have to have like all this COVID preparedness plan, and it just was not coming together. So we went with the march and rally route because, freedom of speech, we get to do that regardless if we have a permit or not. Mm-hmm. And so, we went that route. And I think, part of it was the COVID piece, but also part of it is look at where we're at socially, politically right now. We needed to take a stand and say that we're here for our Black and Brown community members. We're here for our trans members, because oftentimes those are the folks that are discluded. They don't feel like they're a part of Pride. And so I'm very hopeful that with the event that we did, we were able to highlight those voices and hopefully start the conversation of how do we change this, because we want you to be a part of Pride.
In the festival, the speaking part of this year's, I heard mentioned that some of the foundations of Pride came from those movements. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that too?
Yeah, sure. So Stonewall Inn, what year? It's blanking on me now. It was just 50 years. So what does that make it?
That would be 69?
60?
Wait, 69.
Why can't I do math right now? That's okay.
I can
it's right around there.
Yeah. So anyways, Stonewall Inn, that was the start of Pride as a movement, essentially. I mean, we've had all sorts of LGBT appearances, different movements. You might have heard me talk about drag and how that was even, in the 1800s, a thing that was going on. But as far as kind of like a political and social movement, Stonewall Inn was really that start. And why that happened was because of police brutality. And so it's very interesting to see where we're at. And I know that it's not necessarily interesting for some folks because they're like, yes, this is always how it is. It's always been this. I think for the LGBT community, yes, we know that there is police brutality. I think having this kind of really put in our face as far as like the videos, I mean, they were very graphic. And I think that has really kind of called to light this need to band together and help our folks in our community. So anyway, Stonewall Inn, police raided the bar. It was a known bar for LGBT people to go to. It was basically illegal to be lesbian, gay, transgender. Like you were murdered. And so police went in, tried to break up this bar, and finally people were just like, enough. We're not taking this anymore. Like, you have raided us one too many times.
Mm-hmm.
The date on that is 1969, June 28th.
Thank you. And that speaks to, June, Pride Month, right? That's when most of the Pride festivities take place, because, that's when the riots took place. And so, in Mankato, we aren't in June. We usually try to do some kind of small event in June. We've done the art show at the 410 Project before. We try to do a few small things. But the reality is most people want to go to the big Pride, and so we don't want to compete with that. We want people to be able to go to the big Pride because it's fun.
In Minneapolis,
in Minneapolis, because it's fun. It's exciting to be there, and also we've got a lot of campus folk that want to participate in Mankato Pride, and they're not here in June. So we go right away in September, and it's a very common thing for smaller prides. Rochester is in September, St. Cloud is in September, Duluth is Labor Day weekend. So a lot of the smaller prides go to that September month.
Interesting.
That's a pretty good way of doing it.
Yeah.
A little bit more of a meta question maybe about pride, or more personal too. But can you explain what pride means to you, and then also maybe to a lot of the people who attend it, just sort of the sentiment behind that and why they show up? Sure.
I think, so it's interesting as how it started off as a riot, essentially. The next following year was when there was the first Pride Parade. And when I say parade, I mean more like march. So I don't know, like, the total history of how did we get to, here's now an actual parade, and here's the food vendors, and here's the bounce house, and that sort of thing. But I think over time, people did come to see this as more of a celebration of who we are. Being able to be with others in a community. I mean, it's pretty freaking cool to go somewhere with thousands of people and know that a lot of them are also LGBT or at least supportive, and that feels really awesome to be in that environment. You don't get that really anywhere else.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's like in a parade like that, you would feel like nearly completely safe surrounded that way. Which for some people, I can imagine, is not the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you bring up this good question about safety, though. While there are thousands of people that feel like they can go and attend these events, there are thousands more that feel very afraid and that they would not ever attend an event like this because maybe their picture gets posted somewhere and now they're outed to family or their boss or, the neighbor that has like the homophobic sign up or something. And so I kind of really like this, damn COVID, but this turn to some of this like electronic engagement because maybe more people will be able to find a safe way to be involved in Pride events because people are afraid still.
Maybe even the ability to wear a mask too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. In reference to that, how has the attitude towards Pride in Mankato shifted over the 19 years that it's been here? It was overwhelmingly positive this entire time. I can't imagine that it's been the same throughout.
I wish that I had that history as a part of me. I don't because I was not part of the inception of it. What I can say is we every year we get a handful of people that feel like they got to email us and tell us how horrible we are and how sinful we are and we should just take our pride and shove it and those sorts of things. A couple years we did have like I don't even know where they're from, but there's some religious groups that got like the, like faggots will die sign and, like God
like
hates
the
fags. And
WBC.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we had that a couple years. But interestingly, we had a great strategy for just keeping people awake. They had cameras on them. They wanted to see us get riled up, And so we just kept people away. We're like, just don't even go talk to them because they will leave if they don't get what they want. And sure enough, they did, And so I think we've been able to deal with those sorts of incidents pretty good. But it does kind of shake you a little bit like, wow. Yeah, we can be in this kind of like safe bubble of Pride Fest, but then that sign walks up and you're like, ooh, yeah, this isn't like how the whole world views us.
It's rude.
Yeah, totally. It is rude. So rude.
Yeah.
So the gala you were mentioning before, tell what was that going to look like, and what's the vision for it when it's able to come to fruition?
It is going to be so awesome. So we were working with Dan Dinsmore to use the Capitol Room. So if you've seen this place, right? It's beautiful. And so this was kind of a little bit more of an upscale, like fancy. We said, how did we say it? We worded it like, dress in your like chic attire, your like fancy chic. We don't know what that means. It just means come as you are. And if you want to dress up crazy, like this is your opportunity. If you want to wear a ball gown, that's your opportunity. If you're like, I feel comfortable in my jeans and my sneaks, like great, we're okay with that. But we are going to have like heavy hors d'oeuvres, heavy apps. There's a bar, obviously cash bar, but there's a bar, and then a fabulous drag show. So we have all this drag lined up from the cities to come. And so it's going to be like amazing.
Sounds like a real party.
It will be a real party.
I hope we get an invite for that.
Sure. I think we can make that happen.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I grew up going to Pride up in the cities a little bit. My family was thought that was important to be a part of. I have a couple family members who are homosexual, and so it's been interesting coming here too, and then seeing how Mankato does it, both a little bit differently, and then a lot of the similarities too, and the energy and the colors of all these festivals. It's just really great to see. And like you said, providing a place where people can look around and see people who like them and appreciate their existence rather than, I'm sure, in other cases where it's a little bit more frightening to be you.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I think another interesting piece when we think about like Black Lives Matter. Okay. So you can very clearly see that someone is Black, brown, right? Like that's something you can see. For me, I am a white cisgender woman. I happen to be in a relationship and married to my wife. Nobody knows that unless I tell them. And so I just think it's interesting that like there can still be so much privilege in the LGBT community depending on what your other intersections are. And so I was thrilled with the rally that we had because I think it showed a light on, look, there's a lot of diversity within the LGBTQ community and we need to celebrate this. And we also need to support our folks in the community because not everyone can hide behind some identity, right? Like, unless I tell you, you may not know that I'm queer.
Well, and I'm not sure of the statistics on any of this either, but I've heard a lot about how folks, Black and brown folks of the LGBTQ community experience much more extreme, violence and persecution for their
absolutely
existence.
Yeah. If you were there for the part where we read off the names of the transgender folks that have died of violence this year, I can't remember the number, but it was like the high majority. It was like 90% of them were Black or brown. And so like, yeah, that's totally unacceptable.
Yeah, that was a hard one to listen through.
Yeah.
It's important to be talked about, certainly.
Yeah, because I don't think people realize that, like we're obviously seeing a lot of, here's another act of violence, against a Black and brown person. And then you throw in, okay, so here's also someone who is transgender and Black or brown. And it's just like, it's so insane to me that the number is so high of those murdered.
It's hard to keep up. Like, I feel like I spend a lot of time trying to follow incidences specifically of police violence, and I often feel like my head is spinning trying to keep track of how frequently they happen and when they happen. It's wild, and it's only a small percentage of them that end up, being favorable in the eyes of the media. But
right.
That shouldn't, the media shouldn't be the judge of that. I mean, that ideally would be the justice system. But
yeah, absolutely.
It's not the case.
Yeah. And I also think about, so our trans folks, there's a lot that goes into being transgender. You think about just all of the gender norms. You think about changing your name, maybe changing your gender markers. How are people like police or like hospitals or emergency staff, like EMS, how are they going to react to maybe they've got to cut your pants because you were in a car accident, right? And your gender doesn't seem to match with what is biologically going on. I mean, that has caused lots of people to essentially die at not getting proper care because people freak out. Whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, you would expect in the medical field, and I know it's not the case, but that they should be trained to act compassionately in those situations. But I mean, it's hard to know anything about that unless you try. I didn't know anything about trans issues until a couple of years ago when I made a concerted effort to look into it and learn some things. Yeah. But I found that I was just carrying with me a lot of not what I believe to be hateful, but just incorrect presuppositions. You just you only know what you're told.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you find out that the information has changed and science has moved forward through the way that those things works. But there's not any system by which, we inform the public of those things except by shouting at each other, it often seems.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting. So I provide therapy to quite a few people who identify as trans. Some of them are teenagers, and they're so lost in school. It's like, where is the sex education, for people who identify as trans? So I'm like, you want to know something about sex? Like, you just ask me. I may not have the answer, but I'll help you figure it out. Because I'm like, if your body parts don't match up with who you think you are, and then you have questions about sex, like, where do you go? I don't want them going to some messed up website that gives them incorrect info. I'd rather help them find, good, correct info.
Mm-hmm. And even recently, you can see things that change. Like when I first started even caring to learn more information about it, the graphics that they've used, like that genderbread person, has changed a lot, and I believe even started to fall out of favor in some ways, like the way that it's been used. And I couldn't speak on that at all, but it's just interesting to watch, and that's one of the other things that I think that's important about allyship in general is, being willing to continually learn instead of just being like, oh, I'm here.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I spoke about that at the rally on what it is to be an ally. Like, you gotta first get the info, you gotta research, you gotta start figuring some of this stuff out. And then you gotta stand up. You gotta speak up. You gotta, you can wave your, I guess, trans flag if you want, but what else? Are you calling out injustice? Are you calling out when somebody does a microaggression? It's not fun to do that. It's, kind of sucks having to have conflict with people, but it's so important. We have to do that.
Yeah, certainly. And it also, I don't know, it sucks to know how people will respond to, am I going to have to go down with this individual another time? And then how institutions might react to that too. Because the problem is that there's a problem often, know? And I've seen that a lot in the service industry where if there isn't a specific victim, there isn't a crime.
Yep.
And I can't even imagine the answer to that problem,
I know.
Even from a management perspective. Are there any resources that you know of in the community for people who are like looking to learn beyond just educating themselves on the internet?
I would love to say that we've got all sorts of resources. So this is my goal. My goal is to actually get some kind of like community pride center where people can come and get resources, where we can maybe, create some kind of public education programming. We are an all volunteer nonprofit. The only other major resource is the LGBT Center, which again is directed towards the students. I'm sure if you called them up, they'd be happy to try and answer some questions or guide you. But we do have a serious need for where to get those resources. So we are actively working on building up our resources on our website. But I think until we get like full-time staff and someone to run like a center, we're kind of all in the same boat of trying to research.
Is that type of organization, or is that common in larger cities?
Yeah, there are definitely LGBT community centers in other cities. They don't even necessarily have to be large. I've been to some small cities where I've been like, whoa, look at that. Like, that's cool. So I think it's like totally doable. It's just obviously finances, getting the whole structure together, all that kind of stuff. So, but I think our community is to a point where they'd be willing to support something like this. And especially when we think about all of our youth. So at the end of the rally, remember when Kenneth Reed called up like all of the youth, all of the people that were in school, which I know some were college, but still that's all of our youth. I'm like, holy cow, it's like 90% of the people that are here right now, And so we need those resources for them because they're not really getting it anywhere else.
I'm convinced Gen Z is going to save us all. I am so inspired.
I hope so.
Oh God, I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gen Z tears. Love them.
So yeah, I think that would be a good step for us. We're also really trying to expand some of our capabilities. So we've developed like some new structure to the Pride organization so that we can try to meet some of the community need a little better by providing some community education and different events and that sort of thing. So
how many organizers are working with you?
Oh gosh, I haven't counted recently. It's like we're accumulating. It's like the snowball effect, which I love. Somewhere in the midst of like 15 to 20. We'll go 18. We'll just say 18.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned some resources on the website and hopefully more coming soon.
Yeah.
Can you name drop the site, URL drop it?
Oh, sure. scmnpride.org.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll direct people there, and we can do plugs shortly and wrap it up. Do you have any other further questions?
I don't have any specific questions, actually. Now that you ask me, I'm stumped.
Is there anything else you'd like to make sure people, especially people here in Mankato, know about either your work or what's going on with those communities? How can people support you and the work that you're doing, either with the Pride organization or just support LGBTQ folks in their circles?
Yeah, I definitely, financial contributions are totally accepted and we love them because we're a small nonprofit. We don't have like any revenue sources. Like our revenue sources are the community. And so that's always helpful. We are always looking for people that are willing to do things, like we have a very active committee of people that are meeting very regularly and trying to plan things and trying to figure out how can we best support our community. So you're welcome to join the Pride Committee. We've got plenty of room. I think, as far as like community, It's tough. We got to just do the allyship, be those warriors, be willing to, if you hear something homophobic, call it out. If, you notice that you have like an LGBT friend that's like not doing so hot, check in on them. We do have plenty of mental health resources. As I mentioned, I am a therapist. I've got plenty of other therapists at Open Door that can work with folks. We want people to be safe. I believe you probably heard Beth Burrows kind of talk about suicide rate, right? Like, we want you to be safe. We want to get you connected. So I think, just keep an eye on us. Some of us are hanging in pretty good, but some are not. Some need a little extra love.
So just check in and be ready to be helpful.
Absolutely.
All right. And can you do social plugs? I know you got an Instagram, I think, for the Pride.
Yeah. Is it like I need to tell you what the @ is? Because I don't know what it is.
We can tag it, certainly.
I have people that do that.
So search Mankato Pride.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes. We've got a Facebook. We've got an Insta. We've got a Twitter. We don't put anything on there. So you can look at it, but there isn't really anything there.
Blow up their Twitter. With good vibes only, of
yes,
course.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been good chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you.